1-1. Everyone's going to tell you it feels great to finally get in the win column, especially if you're a Bears fan. Look, I wasn't at the game. Max wasn't at the game on Sunday, week 2 against the Bengals. But from the people that we did hear that were there, it was popping because first home game with fans since the 2019 season. But what's up, guys? Welcome into the Fireside Bears YouTube channel. Usayd and Maxx Smith here. You can follow us on Twitter at Usayd and at Maxx Smith ESM. Max, I thought it was eventful because fans were back, but everything that followed after the game was eventful as well, don't you think?
Yeah, there's a lot of buzz in the locker room, in the media, everything. People sparks are flying right now, especially after Andy Dalton's unfortunate bone bruise injury. Everybody is now looking at Justin Fields. It was weird. I had a dream before the game that Justin Fields would come in the second half and we would win the game. I didn't want it to come off of an Andy Dalton injury, and I was a little freaked out that that's exactly, what happened. Justin Fields came out, started second half. We ultimately ended up winning the game. But, yeah, there are questions flying everywhere. And you have a lot of people in the national media who are stepping back their takes or trying to throw fire onto the flames or fuel onto the flames, make everything worse. But we're going to try to condense it as much as we can. We're going to break down whatever that was in that game that we somehow walked away with. And then we're going to talk about this quarterback controversy. But before we jump into that, let's jump into last week's game against the Bengals. Let's start on the offensive side of the ball. What did you see specifically that you liked? Let's start with Andy's time, and then we'll go into Justin's time.
Yeah, I think, look, the Bears had the first possession of the game, so it was nice to see an offense finally march down the field on the first possession and be the first team to score. How many times, and this isn't just exclusive to the Matt Nagy era, you go back to Mark Trestman, John Fox, go all the way back to Lovie Smith. I mean, how many times has the Bears offense come out on the first possession and just completely laid a dud? And when you look at, hey, this week 2 game against the Bengals compared to the week 1 game. Week 1, the Bears had the ball first. They should have scored a touchdown. They didn't do so. And I talked about last week how when we reviewed the Rams game, they need to start but also finish. The Bears did that here. So Andy Dalton taking the offense down the field, scoring was good. I thought that this was also a game where, especially with Andy, you saw that they were more, and Justin too, there were more deep shots being dialed up. The running game did struggle at times, but also we have to understand that when I refer to running game, I'm referring to David Montgomery, and that's about it. Andy Dalton, Justin Fields, both were pretty solid when it came to running the football. We'll get to Justin in just a moment here. And then the wide receivers overall, I thought had a pretty solid first half, but somewhat faltered in the second half. And so switching over to Justin here, I think that, yeah, he played a really solid game. The Bears should have won this game like 31-10 or something, but unfortunately, 3 really costly drops by Mooney and Robinson kind of hurt the Bears. But just exclusive to Justin here, I thought you saw great mobility, pocket presence, great instincts, had excellent feel for when the rush was coming. You also saw the ball was Justin's accuracy stuck out, and the ball placement was great because he was throwing those footballs in only places that the wide receivers and tight ends could come down with them.
Yeah, very, very accurate. So for me, when I watched Dalton, obviously it was a little surprising seeing him pick up 25 yards on the run. I was averaging 12 yards every time he ran it. He ran it twice, so 20, 24, 25. That was incredibly interesting to me because we don't really see Andy Dalton as a guy that's comfortable moving outside of the pocket and running for yards as much as we would see Justin Fields do that. So maybe he learned something from the young kid, which is interesting. You're completely right. Wide receivers looked great. David Montgomery started off a little slow, but there was an occasional nice pickup here and there. What I think is noticeable when Andy Dalton is leading the charge and leading this offense is things operate smoothly, but it's a bit boring. It works. It's effective. It worked with the Rams. The ball was moving, but Andy wasn't proficient at scoring. This offense isn't proficient at scoring the ball when Andy Dalton is a quarterback, in my opinion. Our red zone efficiency isn't nearly as good as it could be with Andy Dalton at the quarterback. Now, we don't have much of a sample to compare with Justin Fields because both times he was in an opportunity to score, there were dropped balls. Allen Robinson, twice actually, and one in the hands, I believe, of Darnell Mooney that he couldn't bring down. It was a little bit out of bounds, but it still hit him in the hands, right? So he was only able to put up 6 points, whereas Andy Dalton put up 7 points with 1 touchdown. Now, again, it's easy to say that because Andy Dalton obviously didn't finish the game. There could have been more points on the board that he could have put up that he left on the table when he got hurt. But I don't think any Bears fans could watch that game and compare just the short sample size that we have and go, it's clear Justin Fields is the much more effective quarterback. We can't make that statement yet. We can most certainly say Justin Fields is a more energetic quarterback that hypes up the offense more. Guys looked more engaged. Guys looked like they were having more fun. The defense definitely reacted when Justin Fields went into the game, and we'll talk about that just in a little bit. But what I also noticed was the personnel change when Justin Fields entered the field. That's a tough thing to say, Justin Fields entered the field. There was noticeable difference in personnel. Damian Williams was in the backfield more. Jesse James was out there a bunch when Justin was out there. And it seemed as if, though, the routes were changing a little bit. And I want to say this because I put it out on Twitter, and it was something that I noticed. I hope you noticed it too. Justin's first 2 series were the same plays over and over and over and over again. And in fact, one of his big passes that he made to Darnell Mooney was the exact same route, the exact same play that Darnell Mooney dropped, which would have been his first big NFL pass. Could have gone for, I think, 20-something yards. Was a beautiful dime of the throw, off the hands extended. Darnell Mooney obviously wasn't expecting a ball that good to be in his hands because he hasn't for years. Same with Allen Robinson in the end zone. So both quarterbacks show that they can move the ball effectively. Justin Fields proved that he's clutch too, which is what you draft him for because he's a big-time guy in big-time moments. When he made a mistake, when he let that ball and one hand get swatted out, it's the NFL, it's the big time. You're not playing against smaller defenders in college, right? He did what Cam Newton didn't. And I think people are going to remember him for that because he was literally the difference between 1-1 and 0-2 there. If he doesn't smack that ball and recover that fumble, his own fumble, there's no way we're coming back from that, in my opinion. So I just want to say fantastic effort. He came up big, said it was my job to put it in the first down so that we could at least kneel the ball. We don't give the Bengals an opportunity, Joe Burrow an opportunity to put the ball in the end zone after the defense started to slow down because, again, they were gassed after those 3 picks towards the end of the game. So I don't think that anyone can comfortably say that Andy Dalton is better with this offense right now, but there are noticeable differences. Andy Dalton is more methodical, more efficient. Justin Fields is a lot more exciting to watch and makes a lot more big-time plays.
Yeah, you put it perfectly regarding the Bears offense in terms of what they are with Andy Dalton. Is it explosive? Is it pretty like a team such as the Kansas City Chiefs, who are basically the model for what this Matt Nagy wants to run? Is it beautiful like the Baltimore Ravens? No, the Bears unfortunately can't execute flawlessly, which is a separate issue in itself because we're in year 4 with an offensive guru as our head coach. But what the Dalton does is he's doing things that Mitch Trubisky and Nick Foles, unfortunately, were unable to excel at. And so I know everyone sat here, and myself included, and kind of didn't want Andy Dalton to start playing this season at all and just go with Justin Fields. But hey, the Bears offense has worked. And I think now what it's about moving forward is continuing to stack solid performances, no matter who the starting quarterback is. I mean, you're looking at week 3, Andy Dalton, and this has just been out there on Twitter. So Andy Dalton's appearing out like 5 to 6 weeks. Ultimately, I think when you look at this, you have to understand that we're getting to a point where this could be the last game that we ever see Andy Dalton play in a Bears uniform. And the reason that I say that is because Matt Nagy, he sent a Bears PR person into the media room on Monday after his own media session and basically doubled down that Andy Dalton's our starter when healthy. But if you look at the Bears' next 3 games, I mean, you're on the road against Cleveland, which is always going to be a hostile environment to play in because Browns fans have the most annoying fan base on the planet.
Outside of Packers.
I know. Yeah, well, okay, so I should say non-Bears rivals. So the Packers are in there anyway because they're the Bears rivals, but Browns fans are just super annoying. All right, I was at the Pro Football Hall of Fame in Canton over the summer, and every time they showed like some big like mini movie of the 2020 season, every time some Browns player would come on screen or coach, they would just start clapping, and I'm like, this is not basic theater etiquette. But getting back on track here. You have the Browns, and then you have the Lions, and then you have the Raiders after that. Okay, so you have 3 really winnable games here. And ultimately, when you look at this, I think that if Justin comes out and plays really good against the Browns, and then all of a sudden he's going to get the nod against the Lions, and then you go to Vegas, which I think another really interesting environment because Raiders fans will show up. Still kind of a winnable game. What will happen is I think Justin's going to start and never look back. And for Matt Nagy, I mean, he's going to pull the, Andy Dalton was injured card. So this wasn't me benching Andy. This was more so just me about continuing, or this was me more about Andy being injured and me just having to do something because of the quote unquote circumstances.
Yeah, I think this fits perfectly in Nagy's narrative. I think this fits perfectly in media narrative, which is fantastic for the media's sake, bad for Andy's sake. I completely agree. I don't think Andy Dalton's going to start another game for the Chicago Bears, and if he does, I would be surprised. But what I'm interested in now is how does Nick Foles, what is his role in this trifecta of quarterbacks that they built and this supporting cast that they built for Justin Fields? Because Nick hasn't dressed the past 2 games, and they really haven't given a reason why. You can look it up. There's really no reason why. Maybe it just decided not to dress him. I'm pretty confident he will dress against the Browns and the Lions here on out because we don't have a 3rd-string quarterback when Nick Foles isn't there. So that's something to look at. And what really needs to happen is Justin Fields, how many reps is he taking with the ones? I think that's a question that needs to be asked here tomorrow or Thursday. Injury report comes out, weekly injury report will come out tomorrow. So we'll really see where Andy Dalton is. I guarantee it's probably going to be put on, doubtful for Sunday. But we need to make sure how many reps is Justin taking with the ones. Is he still working with the scouts, or is he legitimately practicing with the ones? Because it was clear that he needed more reps with the one squad, especially with Sam Mustipher as a center. It takes a long time to build a connection between a center and a quarterback. It doesn't happen overnight. It certainly doesn't happen at home or on the road with a ton of stadium noise. And that cadence is incredibly important, as we saw. A young rookie quarterback going false starts 2 times because the center can't get the ball out, and nobody really knows Justin's cadence yet because he hasn't been practicing with them at all. So that's a relationship that's going to take time to form. I'm not confident, and we'll get into our Browns preview later this week. But I really think the most interesting game these next couple of games is going to be the Raiders, because Raiders look legit, and they came out of nowhere this year. And Derek Carr is putting up numbers right now. So that'll be an interesting one to watch. But that transition is perfectly into the defense, because really, look, in a 2021 NFL football game, if you only have 83 passing yards and you're able to win the game, it's clear that it was because of your defense. What a turnaround from last week, where we were saying the defense was the worst part of this team. Wow, am I eating my words? Thank you for proving me wrong. It's clear that they're the best part of this team, at least this week. We'll see how the Bears offense operates next week. But wow, what an absolute come around from what we saw against the Rams. Sean Desai was picking apart that Bengals offense. What did you see specifically that really got you excited?
Yeah, well, I think the play of cornerback Jalen Johnson, I mean, he pretty much blanketed whoever he was asked to cover all afternoon. And then I think there was also a big rebound from this secondary in general from week 1 compared to week 2. Eddie Jackson, and I tweeted this during the game, saying, hey, listen, he heard everyone kind of doubting him. He went out and he made a couple plays. He's actually tackled. He forced a fumble to kind of set up a go-ahead score for the Bears. You look at Roquan Smith. I mean, he's a player that we already know Roquan Smith flies all over the field, but if you look at the games and, it just sometimes it's just where your eyes are. They have to be in the right place at the right time. And if you understand basic football, you realize that Roquan Smith on the one interception was basically QB spying Joe Burrow the entire time, and then had his eyes on, I believe it was CJ Uzuma, or it might have been a wide receiver for the Bengals. Uzuma's a tight end, by the way. And then boom, just went ahead and completely picked off Joe Burrow. And so that really, I think, speaks to how much smarter Roquan Smith has gotten from 2018 to 2019 to 2020 and now in 2021, just in the sense that, hey, he's able to go ahead and diagnose the plays before they're actually happening. And when we look at all the great middle linebackers in the league, you want to talk a Ray Lewis, a Zach Thomas, a Brian Urlacher, for example. I mean, it's just one great quality that all the great middle linebackers throughout the NFL have had, is being able to read and diagnose plays before they actually happen. And then, hey, Robert Quinn, I know, had a sack. I mean, the front seven got going too. And so 50% of my whole observation with this defense comes down to this: is, was it a step in the right direction and a turnaround for what should be coming down the road? Absolutely. Was it also against a bit of a weaker opponent? Yeah. But hey, listen, everything needs to start somewhere. And so this, you could consider, was a really good starting point for the Bears defense to kind of get their legs beneath them.
Yeah, I agree. I disagree with this sentiment that, oh, the Bears won. Why are we saying nothing negative, or why are we saying nothing but positive things about the fact the Bears won? Because if that's the case, if that's the scenario, coaches shouldn't be coaches. They shouldn't have their jobs, because if they can't point out things to improve upon after making a victory, then why are you wasting your time as a coach? How are you going to get better as a team? And us as fans are completely responsible for saying, hey, great job, great win, but this didn't look super tight. Not sure how this is going to go against this next team. It's totally okay. So when the defense performs incredibly well, 3 back-to-back interceptions, fantastic stuff, one caused by Roquan Smith's intelligence, one caused by Jalen Johnson's intelligence, and one caused by the front seven doing their job, or the front four, which was fantastic. They stepped up. But there are other things that made me a little nervous. There was still miscommunication between Gibson and Jackson. There was still miscommunication between Duke Shelley was getting picked on the entire game. There's miscommunication between him and Kendall Vilder. What I did like, though, which I didn't notice at the Rams game, was Roquan Smith pointing to cornerbacks and pointing at the part of the field or the man he's supposed to cover. That was noticeably absent the first game. So it's clear that players are still learning this defense. After some of these guys who have been here for 2 years with Chuck Pagano, this is a much different scheme already. Already it's much different. We're seeing more stints. We're seeing more fake coverages. We're seeing more robber coverages. We're seeing a lot more where the defense might line up for a cover 4 and it turns to a cover 6 out of nowhere. There's a lot more of that going on. Sean Desai is really good at disguising his coverages, which is great, which is what you want to see in the modern NFL. So there are still things that we can improve upon, absolutely. But it is important to note the positive things. Jalen Johnson is one of the best cornerbacks in the league right now, which is great. Who needs Kyle Fuller? Well, we need Kyle Fuller on the other side because Duke Shelley is getting picked on every play, and that'll just continue to happen. 3 Bengals, the big 3 in the Bengals, Jamar Chase, Tyler Higbee, and Tyler Boyd had a great game. You just can't really, ignore that fact. Joe Burrow had a great game outside of those 3 interceptions back to back, one of which really wasn't his fault. But no, I mean, there's a lot to look forward to in the next coming weeks. The big question is, will Robert Quinn continue playing well? Will Akeem Hicks continue playing well? Will Khalil Mack wake up? Does he have any gas left in the tank? Which is an interesting statement to make. Will Roquan Smith continue this level of play? And Eddie Jackson, what I want to say about Eddie Jackson is he's an all or nothing type player, right? He will either rip the ball out of your hands or he'll miss a tackle because he tried to rip the ball out of your hands. He's there for the big plays. He's there to make sure that the defense gets the ball back. He's not there to make your everyday open field tackle. He's going to try to force a fumble. And if he doesn't, oh well. But that's who he is as a player. And that's why he was so hyped his first year, because he was capitalizing on those plays. He hasn't really the past 2 years. But a fantastic forced fumble off of a really, really shoddy tackle. If he didn't force that fumble, there probably would have been a 30, 40, 50-yard play. It's just the truth. So thankfully it went in our direction. But that's just what you get with Eddie Jackson. It's all or nothing. So that's how I felt about the defense. There's really not a whole lot to say outside of what they put on the field. And we'll get into the Browns preview later this week before the game. But outside of that, I guess the only thing we have left to talk about is this quarterback controversy. If there's anything else you'd like to add.
Yeah, let's get right into the quarterback controversy. And I know we briefly kind of got our feet wet with it a couple minutes ago, but it's just like, you look at this entire controversy, man. And I've continuously said this, and I'm going to say the exact same thing again. Sunday was a pretty good performance for Justin. Okay, did he only throw the ball 13 times yet? Can you throw the ball only 13 times in today's NFL and then win games? Probably not. You can if you have a really good running game and a really good running back and an offensive line that's good enough to sustain that, complemented with a defense that's just predicated on creating turnovers. But the Bears, they're going to need to throw the ball more. Justin's going to have to throw the ball more. You look at the flip side of it. Andy, I'm sorry, but I don't think that after the promise Justin showed, especially considering the context of the situation he was put in, where he was basically asked to go in on the fly, what's going to have to happen is, hey, Andy's not going to get his starting job back. And guess what? Everyone talks about how Matt Nagy and it's not the Patrick Mahomes model. Listen, on a piece of paper, can you call it the Patrick Mahomes model? Yeah. Are you dealing with multiple different two completely different situations? Looking at the 2017 Chiefs and the 2021 Bears, absolutely. There's not a quarterback on the roster that's been here for 5 to 6 years that's playing at an MVP level. There are not tight ends and wide receivers. Well, there are wide receivers that have been here for multiple years, but the main tight end's going into a second season. So ultimately, when you look at this entire thing, you have to realize that Justin, right now, his skill set's going to give the Bears the best chance to win. And so is there going to be a quarterback controversy? Because there's going to be some weeks where Justin's going to be making plays, and it might not necessarily be a major upgrade from Andy Dalton. Yeah, but keep in mind that every single rep is more so about development and getting Justin ready for the next 15 to 20 seasons than it is about just winning in year one. And again, I've said this on multiple podcasts. I'm going to say it again. All right. Drafting a quarterback is not a 5-year investment. When you draft a quarterback, you think for 15 to 20 years in mind. It's no different than going to buy a car. You're not just going to buy any car. You're going to find the one that is the right fit for you, the one that you can afford, one that you're going to get the most, fuel efficient. It's the same thing here. You're going to draft a quarterback. Well, what type of scheme are you going to run? How does that quarterback fit the scheme? How does the quarterback fit the type of offense you're going to run? Do you have the right playmakers around that quarterback to help that QB develop and succeed? And that's ultimately what it comes down to. So quarterback controversy, there shouldn't be any. I think it's time to hand the torch over to Justin Fields, because the inevitable decision that needed to be made as a result of Andy Dalton's injury, the Bears are forced into making faster, but we all knew it was coming, so there's no turning back now.
Yeah, the only effective way to use that term, quarterback controversy, in my opinion, at this point, is if people want Nick Foles to start over Justin Fields, which I feel like there's going to be people out there that do, just because it's the way it is. There's really not much else to elaborate on outside of that. Hopefully, with your car analogy, hopefully you don't draft a lemon like you buy a lemon. But these days we get the Carfax, and the Carfax is what did Justin Fields do at Ohio State, and how much can that translate to the NFL? And I think it's clear that a lot of what you bought is what you saw against the Bengals. Ability to move around the pocket, ability to extend plays, deep ball accuracy, a little bit too long in the pocket, but he likes giving his wide receivers an opportunity to make a play. And that's what his excuse has been every single time. He said, yeah, I wait for them to get upfield because I know I can put the ball there. And he can, and he did. There's just drops that, unfortunately, don't help his stat line any. But if those weren't drops, if those two Allen Robinson catches weren't drops and that Darnell Mooney catch wasn't a drop, Justin Fields could have easily put up 2 to 3 touchdowns. Easily. And there'd be a completely different conversation right now. He would have had a have-a-day post on NFL, would have been, great for him, confidence booster. But I don't think any analyst watched that and said, yeah, no, Justin had a terrible outing. He made a couple of rookie mistakes for sure, but any first-time driver is going to do that. So, Yeah, I don't know if there is a quarterback controversy. I use that word with asterisks next to it because Andy Dalton is done. He's hurt. We don't want to put out a hurt product when we have a shiny new one just ready to go in there. So my answer is the same as your answer, which is majority of fans, is just let Justin start. I guarantee he's probably more ready than Nick Foles is, who hasn't even played a regular season game this year as we go into week 3 against the Cleveland Browns.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to monitor because if Justin comes out and looks pretty good against Cleveland, then you have no choice but to come back week 4 and start him. But that's going to do it from us, guys. Make sure you're following myself and Max on Twitter at MaxSmithESM and at Usayd Koshal. Check out Fireside Bears on Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, TikTok, and Instagram at Fireside Bears. We got a weekly show dropping every Wednesday morning. So that's a podcast available on every single podcasting platform. But bear down, guys. Justin Fields should officially be, he's officially QB1 until the Bears make the announcement. But other than that, guys, we're going to get out of here. Bear down and have a great rest of your day wherever you may be.